Hi everyone, this is Rob Watson, the module leader for TECH1502 Introduction to Community Media, and this is the 20th overview summary lecture for the 20th this is the first overview summary video of the 20th lecture. I can never get that bit right. So what we're going to cover in this session is the idea of music expression as a sense of identity development, and the way in which community media taps into how the importances of music, because the model for the vast majority of community radio stations is music based. One, because it allows you to fill a lot of time. You don't have to spend your time endlessly talking. But the other one is that actually people have a very strong affinity with different music forms, and through music we have a sense of social identity. So we're going to review some issues to do with the kind of society that we've become, the kind of the atomized society, the kind of mixophobic society where people don't really integrate, and we'll look at the idea kind of where people's dependencies are. So what gives rise to a sense of our social roles through these kind of fragmented forms of sociality, which we seem to be kind of part of our lives these days. So we'll look at what's called subcultural identity, which is kind of a strong thread of British cultural studies, which has kind of come from the 1970s, 80s, and so on, which kind of grew out of kind of people finding the punk movement to be relevant, and ska music formats that have a strong sense of location and a strong sense of identity with them. So we'll think about what our social roles are, and really in terms of who has a stronger voice in communities than other people, so issues of voice poverty, and then thinking through, if you like, what music does in terms of opening up spaces for people to come together, to celebrate, to share experiences, and what music says, and what music can point out, and what music can articulate, which goes beyond simply pigeonholing people, but we find common identity. So Leicester has a really strong culture of reggae. There's a strong, vibrant West African community in Leicester, but the appreciation of reggae music goes way beyond that, and it's actually stronger in a number of white working class communities than it is in some black communities, which maybe prefer R&B. So it's kind of the sense of identification with music goes beyond the kind of ethnic cultural issues that we might make an assumption about, and actually extends into a more diverse kind of set of social practices. So we'll look at this in terms of what music can do in terms of building a sense of trust and enhancing a sense of social capital. That what it is that you use music as a currency of identification, so that you can enter places. To be able to go, where I live near Braunston, Narborough Road, and the Braunston Gate has a number of bars which play various different types of music, often quite loudly. Where would you feel comfortable going for a drink? What kind of music says that this is the kind of place that I will feel welcome in? It's for people like me. And so this subcultural identity is very important. And then what we'll do, we'll look at some kind of examples of this. So Resonance FM is a very useful example to look at, because music gives us a sense of social connection, and it's a very powerful facilitator of social connections. And then we'll look at some ideas about which draws on the social capital model, which is the way of kind of using music in a kind of face-to-face way. So community choirs are a very good example. And then thinking about this in terms of what the kind of social practices are that we need to think about, and what music does, and the presentation and the articulation of music does for us in terms of how we use music. Not just how we consume music, but how we produce and use music as well. So there's a kind of sense of this is really fixed in with the kind of DJs, the role of a DJ as being if you like a kind of a participative process and engagement for people to form music experiences which are structured and of the interests of the people involved, rather than being, if you like, just simply bought in. So there's a kind of sense of transformation that goes with this process. There's a sense of fluidity and the kind of fluid interpretations that people have about music. Very difficult to pin this kind of thinking down, because there's a kind of, a subculture is dependent on certain types of trust and certain types of obligation, which aren't so easily pinned down, but kind of come through in a kind of more visceral kind of way, if you like. It's kind of like a set of practices rather than a set of categories. And they overlap, and it's very difficult to find out how these things emerge and what, where they go to and things like that. And they can break into factions, and they can break into something, which is, kind of, oppositional, I suppose. And you get the whole, kind of modern rockers in the 60s beating each other up kind of thing. So, okay, so what can we learn about music in this circumstance, and how can we use music as a positive tool to introduce kind of activities within community media settings? And I think that's something that maybe that we can work on, and kind of really what we can take from the way that people understand and use music as a more strategic way of thinking about the kind of media that we want to produce and the kind of things that we want to talk about, as a way of, if you like, nurturing a sense of community, and a sense of community as something which we identify with. Okay, so the notes for this are up on the DMU Commons wiki. Just go to wiki.our.dmu.ac.uk and download the PDF from the TECH1502 section. If you want to carry on the conversation about this, just go to talk.our.dmu.ac.uk and log in with use the LDAP function and log in with your P number. Share any examples, promote any discussion that you think is relevant to these topics. But I'll see you at the lecture.